I don't often call a piece of hardware sexy, but when I do, I don't. Seriously though, the Anbernic RG353M is a damn sexy retro gaming handheld. Think I'm gonna have to rub one out before the review's over. The RG353M is very similar to the P model. They share the same CPU, screen size, buttons, and many other features. But what sets the M variant apart is its premium aluminium alloy shell.
It's made out of metal.
I love products made of quality materials that are built to last, and this one is a beauty. The pristine CNC cut, together with a few other improvements, makes it one of the nicest handhelds I've fondled admiringly. But it's not perfect, of course, so we'll get into that too. Let's start with the specs. The Anbernic RG353M is available in blue or purple and comes with a Rockchip RK3566 CPU. The 3.5-inch IPS touchscreen is 640 by 480 and is perfect for the 4:3 aspect ratio retro titles. It's fairly bright and features good color reproduction and viewing angles. This handheld is dual boot, Linux and Android. It also features a 3500 mAh battery. In the box, you'll find a manual, USB-C charging cable, screen wipes, and screen protector. If you go for the pricier models, you also get a 64 or 256GB microSD card full of games. While I do really enjoy the Anbernic RG353P and use it almost daily for my retro gaming fix, I think I'll switch over to the M for a few reasons. The D-pad feels a bit stiffer, which I prefer, and it's great at doing those Hadoukens. The Hall sticks are a big improvement. They provide more resistance and no longer feel like Switch Joy-Con sticks, which many people don't like. Obviously, it's still not up to console game controller level, but for a handheld this small, they're the nicest sticks I've used so far. I do like the placement of the buttons on the front, but power and reset has now been moved to the right side and volume is on the left side. I really don't like buttons on the side of handhelds. I find them very awkward to press, and it takes you away from the natural grip of the system. But at least these are buttons you won't be using often. Still, I would have liked Anbernic to put the buttons below the screen, as Sony did with the PlayStation Portable. That way the thumbs can easily make volume adjustments or power off the system. The function button is awkwardly placed at the top. It's used in Anbernic's Linux OS to access emulator menus, save states, and quit games. I can reach it with my index finger, but it sure isn't comfortable, and I preferred the placement on the RG353P. The shoulder buttons have been placed horizontally instead of vertically, which I thought would be a problem, but it's actually pretty intuitive. With the L2 and R2 clearly raised up, it's obvious which button you're pressing. The headphone jack would have been better placed underneath the handheld, where the two SD card slots sit, as that gives you more slack when you're wearing headphones and makes for better cable management. There's also a charging port, OTG USB-C for other devices such as an external controller, and the mini HDMI port returns for outputting to a display at 720p. My large hands find the smaller M handheld less comfortable than the 353P, but the smaller form factor is definitely easier to carry around. It's also quite a bit heavier. The RK3566 CPU is a decent performer which can emulate systems up to the Dreamcast. PS1, no problem. CPS 1 to 3 and Neo Geo, all good. With Nintendo 64, you'll be okay if you stick to native resolution in Linux. The Nintendo 64 emulator in Android works better, allowing you to increase the resolution. Another emulator that's better in Android is the Drastic DS emulator. It's the only way to get touchscreen support, as it unfortunately doesn't work in Linux. I still think Linux is the way to go in most cases, as it's just a much better OS for retro gaming. You can also install custom operating systems like GelOS for better results. Dreamcast games work pretty well overall. Some work at full speed, others need frame skip enabled to get a good experience. It's certainly not perfect, but very playable. I'm not a fan of PSP games on this device, as a 16:9 aspect ratio means black bars at the top and bottom for a very small screen experience. But if you do want to go ahead with it, you can play a decent chunk of the PSP library at native resolution. An annoyance with Anbernic's Android 11 OS is that it doesn't come with a Google Play Store, and you'll have to sideload apps to install anything. It's not ideal. Luckily, they've included a bunch of apps for you to use, including emulators and the streaming app Moonlight. For most people, I wouldn't be recommending a 4x3 handheld for streaming, as there's so many 16:9 aspect ratio games out there. But streaming does work okay if that's what you want to do with it. Sound comes out below the handheld, and the sound quality of the new speakers is better than the RG353P. Battery life is pretty good. My test was to have Daytona USA on Dreamcast playing in Linux at full brightness. Sound was at 3/4 of the way up. Total battery life before it went black was 5 hours and 43 minutes. If you turn the brightness down and play some less CPU intensive titles, the 7-hour runtime Anbernic claims should be achievable. Anbernic has gotten a lot of things right with the RG353M. The metal shell is durable, provides better heat dissipation, and feels premium. The Hall sticks are a great improvement, and the stereo speakers have better sound quality. For my large hands, comfort has dropped a bit over the 353P, but I still think this is the nicest 4x3 handheld out there. It comes highly recommended if you're keen on a retro gaming handheld that will last you a long time and plays up to the Dreamcast. But if you prefer a cheaper option, check out my review of the RG353V, which is very similar, but is like a supercharged Game Boy. Cheers!